Hi, I'm indie fantasy author Melinda Kucsera, and in this episode, Isaac Hill is joining me to talk about his book, The Dragon Legion. So welcome, Isaac, and tell me about The Dragon Legion.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome.
So, The Dragon Legion is a first in series. It is my debut, and I'm going to just chat a little bit about the blurb and talk about the series and tell you folks all about it. So, the blurb for the book, the pitch, is broken generations ago in the cleansing. The Sunborn Bloodline persists. Dragh, the Sunborn Empire's last son, rises in the ranks of the Second Legion, a legion of criminals. Sent to quell the rebelling northern tribes, the last Sunborn son finds himself in a cruel world of politics, murder, and betrayal as he struggles to survive. Welcome to the Sunborn Series, where empires rise, fall, and against all odds, rise again. The Dragon Legion is born.
Oh, wow.
So that's my book. Yeah, that's book one.
Is that like the recruiting commercial? Like somebody go around with like a bullhorn, like join the Dragon Legion.
Exactly. Yeah. And so what's funny is I had reviews on the ARCs, and one of the reviewers said, I think the most interesting thing about this pitch is it's a legion of criminals. How does the prince find himself in a legion of criminals? And I, until that moment, had not thought, wow, that really is a big feature.
So, all right, now that the question has been asked, how did the prince find himself in a legion of criminals?
So, I actually hadn't written it. So I had an idea of why. I had the backstory in my mind a little bit. And so I've actually decided to write a novella about it. The novella, which is now done, it is pegged to go off to the editor at the end of the weekend, so in 3 days, and I hope to have it out sometime in the next 3 months. So as soon as it comes back, that'll give me a timeline on how fast I can turn it around and get it formatted and up. And I actually plan on giving that novella away for free.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That's cool.
So the answer to the question of why he is in the Second Legion as a criminal is going to come out soon.
So you conceived and wrote this whole story like never even wondering about his backstory. He was just there.
So the story of how this story became is I got into writing, and I've always told stories. I tried writing stories for a number of years. I remember all the way back in grade 3, like writing on loose leaf about an orc that found the One Ring and some magma. And that was, those are the kinds of things that I was trying to tell stories about. And so, as I grew up, I kind of lost that hobby. And in the pandemic, I was talking to my wife about, what kind of hobbies should I be doing? I've got all kinds of free time now. And we talked it through, and I thought, well, I've always wanted to be a writer. Like, I've always wanted to write stories. And so I started writing. So I did a kind of a NaNoWriMo in October with a friend of mine. And I got my 50,000 words maybe a month later, after the end of my NaNoWriMo together in October. And then that book was terrible in so many ways. Like, I printed it off, I read the first page, and I just thought, no.
But you have to get the crap out, pardon me, English, before you can get to the good stuff. And you can't edit a blank page, but you can edit the worst draft you've ever written. And
it is in a tote with the other bad stuff, and it will never see the light of day. It was so bad. And so on to the next. And I did not agree with this idea that you need to write short stories to get good at telling stories. Writing a novel is not writing a short story.
No, but I do understand why people say that, because writing a novel is not easy. You have to understand structure. Otherwise, you end up having a lot of problems in the middle of the book. So I didn't understand that in the beginning because I was not interested in short stories either. But now that I've written so many books, like, I get it. Like, I understand. And I think that needs to be, I think it needs, there's some explanation that has to go into that when someone tells you should start by writing short stories, not because you're learning the structure, but the structure of a short story and the structure of a novel aren't the same. So like, I get both sides.
I think the advice that, and I think you already hit on it, is you need to get it out. You need to write. You need to get stories out there to practice stories. Doesn't matter what kind.
Yep.
Yeah. So I wrote another book in the next NaNoWriMo. If I'm going back a little bit before that, I also kind of like started writing a little bit of a book. It was about this spy in World War II, and his name was Art. Classic name. And he was in Egypt during the war, and he had a little sidekick, and he was kind of investigating this hidden treasure that the prince of Egypt had hidden in one of the pyramids. And then I realized I was just like writing Indiana Jones, and I was like, what am I doing here?
But sometimes you have to do that. You have to write the things that you know and get them out of your head. And then you can get to the stuff that is you.
Exactly. And so I did a lot of that.
That was your fan fiction phase.
that was my fan fiction phase. I still live on Indiana Jones. I was talking to my wife about this the other day. Like, I still sometimes listen to the Indiana Jones soundtrack when I write, because I love it. I get,
yeah,
all excited.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So I write the Dragon Legion, and the Dragon Legion started before the NaNoWriMo, and it ended a couple of months later. So I just continued to work on it because it was, it was about 100,000 words. I got the majority of it done in NaNoWriMo, and finished it off later, and then I packed it away. And so I did shop a little bit around, sent it to a couple of agents, and just thought I'd try my hand at seeing what this thing was worth for a story. And that didn't go anywhere. So I wrote another book.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
I didn't even bother querying. I was like, yeah, I'm just going to self-publish. We just skip that step.
So I'd been part of that kind of analysis paralysis for years, listening to podcasts about self-publishing versus publishing, and all of the different opinions. And so I just thought I'd give it a shot. So I wrote another book, and that book was about a street magician in the 1850s in London who has his body stolen and finds out magic is very real, and uncovers a plot to kill the queen and has to save her while he's trying to get his body back from the people that stole it. Yep. So I shopped that around, and it got a lot of very quick rejections. And so I kind of knew I was onto something with my writing. I think I was getting better at telling stories. And then I met a couple of people that were talking to me about publishing and writing, and I joined a writing group, an in-person writing group, and they started to help me work on the skill of editing. And so that's when it really changed for me. I had only ever worked on the skill of writing. I never really worked on the skill of editing. And so I started getting feedback on my writing. I started cleaning it up, and then I just sat down and said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to publish the Dragon Legion. I've already written it. So the exercise now is to edit it and make it palatable, make it better. And so the story was there. I had to work on some parts of it, just some editing on character and continuity. And so I went about the exercise of getting a beta reader, hired a semi-professional beta reader who gave me some excellent advice on motivation and plot. And then I met some people, which are now called the break-ins. And so you've had
that's right.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, the name looks familiar. I think I've met him before. And I was like, I wonder if this is the break-ins.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And so the first person I met was Rob Lay, who wrote Pathlighter, and for some
And
reason,
before we go any further, you listeners or watchers, if you're on YouTube, there's a previous episode called "The Break-ins," and that's the group that we're talking about. Is the authors some of the authors from it came in on that one, and they had we discussed how they got together and all that and what they're doing. So definitely check out that episode. It was a ton of fun. So, okay, go ahead. Sorry. I just wanted to let people know that there was a whole episode with some of the break-ins so they can check that out to find out more.
Yeah, no, of course. And so it's a really exciting thing when you kind of find your community. Right? And so I met Rob. We connected. I started my own social medias for writing this book and for getting it out there in preparation. And after that, I heard from a couple of different authors. I think the first person to reach out to me was I think it was Josh. And so Josh messaged and said, "Hey, like, I see you're gonna publish. Yeah. Are any interested in joining this group?" I thought, wow, what could it hurt? He said, "Well, it's on Discord." I said, "Well, what's Discord?"
Oh yeah. I the first time I was invited to a Discord, I was like, I don't understand. It's like, how do you find where people are talking? I still struggle with keeping up with the conversations on it because it's like,
oh yeah,
so many. Some Discords can get large with many. Yeah.
Yep, it's an MSN chat room. That's all it is, with different rooms. That's all it is. And so I remember having discussions with Rob about, I don't know kind of the path towards getting this, published, self-published properly. And we talked a lot about, getting the right editor and making sure that I had the right kind of cover design for the genre. Excuse me.
Yeah, that's the hard thing.
Right. And so I was dipping my toes in, and then I met the rest of the break-ins, and they were an absolute wealth of knowledge. They introduced me to some editors. They introduced me to some proper cover designers and artists, and they helped me, I would say, gain the confidence to go through with getting the Dragon Legion published. Without Rob and Josh and Scott and Adrian and all the gang, I wouldn't have published this book. And if I had, I don't think it would be nearly as good as it is now. So that was the kind of exciting path towards getting this published. And I would say, the biggest part is finding that community and finding a group of like-minded individuals to maybe not even just help you along the way, but to be in your corner.
Yeah, I hope they stick around. Like when I first started I can't remember. It was this British guy who started like a whole thing where to introduce offers, and a whole bunch of people sign up and they put you in cohorts. And like, I can't find anybody else in my cohort that's still publishing. Right. This was like, like 2007, 17, 2000. No, this is 2017, 2018. Lost track of so many of them. So I hope your cohort, the break-in stay together. Because mine, I kept publishing and I completely lost track of like everyone else. Some of them like left publishing. It's hard, and some people only have like 1 or 2 books in them and they don't really want to make a life or a career out of it. They just want to get it out and that's it. And all of that is valid. So it's hard to find like your cohort. Like, that's great that you have the break-ins. I don't have a cohort anymore. I miss that. It wasn't like your cohort was, because we were all coming at it. We were all, I think it was 2016, maybe, or early 2017. We only had like 1 book out. But and there was nobody who had more experience than anybody else. They put you in groups of people who are in the same spot as you, like, so you can pull each other up. Yeah. But it didn't quite work out that way. So it was a good idea.
Well, and I think it's natural to have some people in groups fall off and
Yeah.
have life changes that don't allow them to kind of continue down that path, or maybe it's not for them. What I find promising is, you know, when we're not talking about the next book that's getting launched, you know, Scott launched a book and it was fantastic. Brian launched his second book, Son of the Prophet, Son of Prophets, and then A Memory of Song from Scott, and Adrian, Mushroom Blues, and Josh is getting ready to launch his. Arcs are coming out this summer. When we're not talking about that stuff, and Andrew Watson actually just published his novella today, which is really exciting as well. But we're not talking about that. We are talking about the grind that is writing, and we're all writers, as well as authors, and we talk a lot about that, about the fact that, hey, this is a long game, and if you want to write books, keep writing, and we're all in it, which is really fun, because, you know, you can say, oh, you know, I'm stuck in the middle right now. You know, I got 50% done, and there's a lot of morale boosting, a lot of you got this, and it's really nice to be able to talk to the people when it's not the exciting launch phase.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're stuck on something, you can always chat with a friend. So that's been a very pleasant experience in getting this over the finish line.
I don't have that anymore. I mean, I have some masterminds, but we're all at different places, so
yeah,
it's not the same. And like, I've become that person who has published way more books than anybody else. So I'm like, come with the things that I am stuck on, and they're like, well, we can't really help you.
yeah,
it's all right.
And I'm sure that'll, you know, naturally happen over time with any group, right?
Yeah, it's rough.
The nature of the beast.
It's hard, you know, and there's so many different ways to publish now. You know, you don't have to be in Kindle Unlimited. There's so many different things you can do. So many avenues.
Yeah, and it's sometimes the hard part is making those decisions, right? How
Yeah.
am I going to get this out there? Do I want to have my own store to sell direct? Do I want to go through Ingram? Do I want to go through different printing? It's endless decisions, and like the advice that I would give someone starting where I was a year ago is good, better, best. It is better to have it published and worry about the rest later.
Yeah, and it's all about testing and trying, and that's where being in a group, you know, is helpful, because you can, if you're all trying different things, you can report back about it, which is why I like the mastermind groups. We are all approaching it from different ways, but it's also difficult, because then if you're all approaching it in different ways, if you're stuck on something, you're maybe the only person. That's the situation I find myself in the most often. I'm doing the thing that nobody else is doing, and like there isn't anybody else to ask, so you have to find other places where authors congregate and try and find other people who are doing that same thing to see, okay, how are you approaching it? You know?
Yeah, that's got to be a very interesting experience, like, because
it's not fun.
From where you started to here, right? It's
it's not
an amazing journey for you.
Yeah, it's not fun. It's like it's not fun, especially like when you find those other people and your experience with it is so vastly different than theirs is, and the way that your audience responds to it is so vastly different the way theirs does, and you're like, okay, I see what you are doing, but I tried that and it does not work for my situation. Yeah, but you know, it's hopefully your group is elastic enough that it can accommodate like people trying different things, and you can survive that, where you're all kind of pushing off into your own different directions and still find that common ground, because that can be difficult.
Yeah, that's fair. Probably good advice, frankly.
Yeah. But it's all testing, you know, what works today. That's one thing that I have learned since I started publishing in 2016 is what worked in 2016 doesn't work now. Mm-hmm. What I did in 2016, you could not do, and you would not get the same results that I did back then. It was different. Publishing was a totally different animal back then.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, you can kind of hear that through the years over content and podcasts like your own, or
Yeah.
others like Self-Publishing Podcast or Writers Inc. Or you've the industry is changing, and so like that's one of the things that I love about where we're at right now as an industry, is that we can be published authors that are in control of our career. So,
but are we in control? Because there's still a lot of algorithms and things that are controlling things.
Absolutely. But at the end of the day, like one of the things that I learned in writing this book is Dragon Legion is my creation, and I have final say on what goes into it.
It's true.
And I wrote a military fantasy, historical fantasy, epic fantasy. That's the start of a series. And the only thing that I am in true control of is making it the best book and the best series and the best story that I can make it.
That's true. That's
the rest is up to the gods, right?
To the algorithm, the almighty algorithm. All hail the algorithm.
Exactly.
Give me some love, algorithm.
Yeah, you can see the days that you're getting love on your sales, right? On the KU reads.
Yeah. And, well, I'm not in KU, but yeah, I'm wide, so I can have more freedom with what I can do with my books.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's fair, and that's the funny thing about it, right? I made the decision to go into KU with the Dragon Legion.
I did that for many years, and I understand why people do it. And for many years, it worked for me, and then it did not work for me anymore. Everything was purchases, and I had like no page reads, and I was like, I might as well just untick the Kindle Unlimited box, because nobody is reading it in Kindle Unlimited. I'd be literally losing nothing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, that's when I decided. I was like, I really want to be in libraries and accessible. So
yeah,
uncheck the box.
Obviously, it's a good decision to make your book accessible to as many people as possible, right? Once you get yourself established, is like, hey, that's the name of the game, right? You want to put yourself out there and get some traction. And there are some limitations to the Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah, but I like being able to tell people, well, you can't read in KU, but you can go to your library and read it.
Yeah.
You can get it through Libby and all those other things. They're all there, every one of them.
Yeah, I didn't appreciate libraries earlier in my life, but I absolutely do now. As a guy who likes to read lots of books, if you're not in Kindle Unlimited, then the library is just a fantastic resource.
No, it definitely is. But let's get back to the Dragon Legion. All right. So we've got the prince is moving up in the ranks. We'll find out in the novella that's coming soon in a couple of months why he's in the Legion. So the prince is the main character, or is somebody else the main character?
Yeah, Dragh is the main character. So that book that I wrote, another book that I wrote in another NaNoWriMo, the kind of the inspiration for the Sunborn series, I guess, was about Gale Sunborn. Gale Sunborn is Dragh's grandson. And so I had this inspiration, this moment where I saw this scene of a young boy being woken in his bed and shaken awake by his father, and his father saying, "We have to go. The kingdom is lost." And then this young boy running with his father through a castle to escape a coup by one of his generals. And so I was just so excited by that scene and that premise that I wrote a book about it. That book is a trunk book. It's in the tote. It'll never see the light of day. Maybe one day it'll even get burned.
Or you'll get to a point where you're like, there was some things about that story I really like. Let me see how far I have progressed. Because every author does it. At some point, you've come so far in your skills, you want to see, can I take this trunk novel and make something good out of it? You watch. At some point, the temptation will be there. And one of those trunk novels, you will pull out a red pen and see what you can do with it. Just to test what you have learned.
So that's happened to me, actually, funny enough. So the Dragon Legion came from the grandfather And so the grandfather in that book was Dragh. And I said, I love this character. How did he become a general? And so this story is the story of how the Dragon Legion came to be. It's the story of how Dragh Sunborn went from being a prince, born to a king, to being in a legion of criminals who report to his uncle in the Second Legion, who is also a criminal. And so it's the story of becoming, a coming of age story that was really inspired by a completely different book. And he's just happened to be a very interesting character. And I thought, let me tell his story. And so through feedback I got from early readers, I will absolutely be telling the grandson's story as well. And it's going to be a generational story. Mm-hmm. And so each book will move to the next generation to tell the story of how the Sunborn family gets their empire back. So that's kind of the kicker of all of this is the Sunborns had an empire and they lost it in the event called the cleansing. The council, as they're called, rule the nations. And they don't rule the nations through your typical force, but they are in charge of all of the kingdoms. All of the kings report to the council, and the council is the group that broke the Sunborn Empire and had a cleansing of the earth. And so the story follows those groups quite closely, and we find out over about 5 stories how that empire comes back and how the Sunborns gain it. So pretty excited to be telling the story. I've got it all mapped out.
Okay.
I've got some outlines cooked. I've got book 4 because I had a plan that has changed. I've got book 4. I've got about 100,000 words written in book 4 already. So I'm kind of jumping backward to make the in between.
So you're a planner?
I'm half and half.
You're in between. So, you're like what is it? Planter?
Yeah, something like that. So
Planter.
I started as a pantser because I thought.
Yeah,
I read On Writing and thought
I read it and I hated that book. I hated that book so much.
Okay.
Well, I read Bird by Bird too, and I was like, I know. I mean, I don't know. I didn't find any. I read On Writing and it wasn't, and to me, it wasn't practical. He just wanted to talk about how he got into it, which it was interesting from a autobiographical perspective, but not. I think the problem was I read On Writing after I'd already been publishing.
Oh yeah,
so I was like,
yeah, there you go.
The cognitive dissonance between the way he chose and the way I chose was like, I think that's why, like, from a autobiography point of view and like from, wanting to know more about his life and all that and how he got into things, it's interesting. But for actual like writing advice, it was like, no.
It's one person's experience and process. And what I've learned is everybody has their own unique process.
Mm-hmm.
It is something you can teach some of, like principles of, but it has to work for you as an author, right? Like one example, the novella that I have, I wrote, I was on vacation with my family. I wrote it using my cell phone and a Bluetooth keyboard that I bought in like 2013 at Source. Cost me like $19.99. I wrote the novella on that instead of my computer, and that process was foreign to me until I did that. I'd never really thought through that, and but it taught me that process is fluid and it can change and it's environmental, and you just have to find what works for you.
Yeah. And the more you do it, the more you refine that process.
Yeah. And so for my books, what I've found, I've written a couple now. I didn't think to count them before, but I think I've written maybe 5 or 6 books now in the novella. I guess that's where we're at. the trunk books, I don't know. Maybe they count, maybe they don't.
I think like by the time you've written like 10 or 12 books, like then because you think you have one when you get to 5 or 6 books, but you really don't. You're on the beginning of it. By the time you're like hitting like, you know, your 18th or your 20th, like even then, like, you know, you're like, yeah, it takes many books to put together the process. And what you have, it's always evolving too. That's one thing that I have learned. The process that I had when I was 5 or 6 books out is not the same process that I had when I was 12 or 13 books into the writing thing. And now that I am getting closer to 30 books published, written and published, it's totally different than it was.
Yeah. I can absolutely see that. Like I can even feel my editing process completely shifting and changing from what it was in the first book to the novella, and I'm sure that it will when I write the second book as well, which I've started on.
It gets to a point where you're like writing something, you're like, I am gonna have to fix this. Like something about this is not right. I need to reread everything that came before it, but I don't have time right now. So placeholder. We already know that this is going to have to change in some way. There's something I'm forgetting that I did earlier that I was supposed to connect to, and I can't think of it right now, but going to keep writing, come back and fix it later.
Well, and your mind works in funny ways. Like, you know, the Dragon Legion, the feedback I got from the initial beta reader, because there was one, he was excellent. He said, you know, you've got an event here, and the event is predicated on a motivation from a certain set of actions. And he said, I don't believe it. I thought, well, that's not good. And he said, it ruins the rest of the book. You know, it's the start of the third act. A lot rides on that being believable, and I don't believe it. He said, so you have to find a better way to tell it, describe it, sell it. However, and so my editing process, you know, was influenced by that kind of commentary and feedback. And so, you know, the structure of this book is a 3-act structure, like most other stories that you see. And as I rode that editing train, I learned a lot about how you fold the motivations of people and groups into your writing. I think I'm like very much a character-driven author. I want interesting, fun, sometimes not nice characters, and I want them to grow and learn. And I think that that's something that I really put in the pages of this is growth for my main character, Dragh. He's not the same person that he started as at the start of the book as he is at the end.
And nor should he be.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a flat character is boring, and I learned that about secondary characters too. You know, like they're people too, and you gotta kind of give them something interesting, because otherwise you're writing them, you don't know why. They can't just be an extra. And he's got a motley crew of friends, let's say, in his squad in the Second Legion, and I think that they're just as much fun to write as he is a lot of the time, because they turn out with their own personalities.
No, and I love military fiction. So like that's the fun of those the military fiction, especially, because not just are this them playing the secondary characters playing a role as part of the story and the main character's development, but they also play a role in their military unit. So so they're working on multiple levels, which makes those stories like absolutely fascinating for me. Maybe not for other people. There's, you know, I'm weird. I'm not into the romance. I want the military stories. I want all of the military stories. My absolute favorite series in the world at the moment is the B.B. Larson has this it's the Undying Mercenaries, and I've read every single one 4 or 5 times. I absolutely adore them. It's sci-fi and military, and it is hilarious. It is so funny. But and in that, and what makes it so great is that their secondary characters are there. Sometimes some of them are there to like try and, you know, for the main character can sort of grow. But that's the fun part of this, is the main character doesn't really, he learns a lesson and then he decides, wasn't, if it's not his self-interest, maybe at the end he's like, maybe we don't do that again. maybe you know, he does grow, but it's like it's weird, it's funny. But like the side characters are they have their own arcs, but they're also they're all scrambling for power. So and he just is trying to slide by with doing the least amount of work possible. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. But should we meet the? Oh, you said you're gonna read the prologue. I was gonna say, should we meet them? Because it sounds like a good segue to it. But you're gonna read the prologue. I don't know who we meet in the prologue.
So it's a different character in the prologue.
Okay, so who are we meeting in the prologue? Because I don't want us to miss the excerpt. It's my favorite part of the podcast interview.
Yeah, I got excited. Sorry about that. Jumped ahead.
No, it's okay. There's not like a strict order. Like I said, you're doing 90% of the talking, so it's totally fine to jump around. But I want to make sure we get that in there because it's my favorite part of the podcast. and there are a few podcasts where we didn't get to it.
That's fair. So I'll read the prologue, and if you want me to read the first chapter too, I can do that too. It's okay. They're a little short. I like them kind of punchy at the start to get people in.
Okay. So. Could we read both? So we get like a sense of like, I know the prologue is your favorite, but then the first chapter gives us a taste of like the characters that we've just been talking about, like our first introduction to some of them. So I feel like that would be, then we do both. We get the best of both worlds. And I love hearing authors read to me. So I'm going to be in heaven for the next however many minutes of this. So I'm going to mute myself. You go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Ship to port, Captain. The lookout above them shouted from the crow's nest. Aye, first mate, lower the lines, Ella called out. The wind howled across the deck of the ship, the cold cutting through the clothes and chilling the men of the Relaria. Ella looked out across the deck of the small cutter. It was sleek and fast, made for darting between islands, a small fish designed to be faster than the prey she would outrun. The Relarians had been on the sea as long as their history was recorded. They were one with the sea. Ella could remember the first time he'd set foot on the deck. He felt like he'd belonged. A lowly deck boy, now a captain of the fleet. He took a deep breath as he watched the small rowboat, a distant speck of light at first, growing larger as it grew closer in the darkness. The light bobbed up and down as it moved across the shallow bay the Relarians had moored in. Men scurried across the deck. Ella watched as ropes flew down to the rowboat, the men below tying her up as it drew close to them. The ropes creaked. The rowboat clattered against the side of the Relaria. Ease the lines, Ella called out before his first mate could. His first mate gave him a look of apology, to which Ella shook his head. These newcomers were obviously flat-footers, with no sense of the sea. They didn't know how much slack to give the lines. Ella knew the Relaria could take it. The little rowboat, on the other hand, their boat would take a beating against his cutter without slacking the lines. He didn't want to rescue them when their boat began to sink. The Relarians pulled on the lines to help the passengers make the deck. The first two up were barrel-chested and broad-shouldered, with long, dark beards and hair braided in the Eastern fashion. Ella spotted the bulge of daggers hidden beneath their leather vests, with empty sheaths at their sides. He smiled. They underestimated him. The deal had been brokered. No weapons to be brought aboard. This slight was forgivable, but now he knew that they did not respect him and didn't think he was smart enough to spot it. The third man, much smaller than the first two, was hauled up and over the rail. He was covered in a dark cloak, black and heavy. He sported a cane, a slight but well-crafted thing. Ella walked towards the three, swaying with the boat. The three looked to be fish out of water, hanging onto the deck, bucking the swells. Sirs, welcome aboard the Relaria. Ella welcomed them with a bow on the deck. Captain, the third man greeted him, impatient and without a bow. What brings you here tonight? Ella asked. The third man sneered, moving forward with his cane. Click, click, click. The man approached Ella, coming within an arm's distance of him, almost falling as the ship tilted to the port side. He steadied himself with his cane. Captain, what say you to our proposal? Ella met the man's gaze. I took this meeting out of respect for Kucsera. He has served me well as a broker in the past. You took this meeting because you're a pirate, and I offer you gold for your ships. Alalara said nothing. The third man narrowed his eyes and looked around. You know the terms? Alalara nodded. I offer you gold. I need 20 ships, and I need them for a voyage across the Eastern Sea and back. What is the cargo? Alalara asked. The smaller man fixed him with a stare. Kucsera agreed that the terms were no questions. Alalara nodded. You come to me because you need ships to move men, no? Kucsera says cargo, but no one needs 20 ships to move cargo. They need 20 ships to move an army. Alalara's first mate took a step forward. The two Easterners did the same, their hands buried in their vests. Alalara put his hands up. Enough. We had a deal, the little man spit out. No, we agreed to meet, to hear you out, but the Relarians do not interfere with the business of the Flatlanders. The little man took another step forward, towards Alalara. No questions. That was the deal. What do you care what you take across the seas? The blood you're going to spill will color the seas. We'll have no part in chumming the waters. Bloody pirate. The slight man brandished his cane as if it were a sword. Alalara spit on the deck of the ship. You insult me and bring weapons aboard my ship? We will not work with those who do not honor the terms of a deal. I offer you more gold than you could carry on your hold, and you spit on our deal? Alalara put his hands up to stay his men. The Relarians had circled the two Easterners and were now forming a ring around Alalara and the slight man in the black coat. Leave. We will have nothing to do with you. The man's eyes bulged. His face turned red. You'll regret this, pirate. Alalara said nothing, motioning for the man to leave, to get off his ship. The three returned to the port side of the ship and lowered themselves over its side. The two larger men helped the slight man over and down to the rowboat and followed behind. None of the Relarians moved to help them. Cast off, could be heard from below. The Relarians pulled their lines back up on deck, coiling the ropes at the deck rail. Alalara nodded to his first mate and walked away from the main deck. Alalara was not a man of the land. He was of the sea, of the wind and the salt spray, a man of the Relarian Islands, but he knew full well what this dark man had proposed would rock the world of men and the lands from one sea to another. What of it, Captain? His first mate asked quietly as they walked to the bow of the ship. Alalara let out a long breath, one he hadn't known he was holding. We're men of the seas. We do not concern ourselves with what happens on land, Alalara said to him. The first mate nodded. Aye, Captain. They watched the small rowboat push off their bow and make for the dark cove to the west. Its small torch flickered in the night, a beacon in the inky blackness. The waves rocked it to and fro, the Relaria a mirror in the swells. Alalara cursed. What is it, Captain? Alalara turned and made for the wheel of the ship. He put his hands to his mouth. Raise anchor. Make ready the mainsail. He turned to his first mate and cursed again. We should have killed that man. He will bring the pit down on all of us. It is for the Flatlanders to decide. It doesn't concern us, the first mate said, referring to the men on land. Ah, but war, she spills to the seas, and they turn red with the blood that soaks the earth, Alalara said, quoting his own father. You tell the men, no one speaks of this, not in the ports, not in their lovers' arms, not a word. Alalara gave his first mate a look. He needed him to understand that they were playing with fire. Zufir save us, the first mate whispered to himself. The cutter began to move in the night. The anchor pulled out from her prison at the sea's floor. The ship, rolling as she cut through the surf, provided comfort to Alalara. The sea's wind blew in his face, breathing life into his sails. So that's the prologue. So I guess I'll move on to chapter 1.
If you wouldn't mind.
Sure thing. Just need a drink. Reading.
We allow beverages.
Thank you. Thank you. It's water. It gives you an appreciation for what audiobook readers have to go through. Dragh, the jailer called down the damp stone hall. Dragh stood with his arms resting on the bars of the cell door, hands hanging into the prison hallway. His jailer liked to bat at his arms, trying to catch them with his club as he made his rounds. It was a game they played. Dray's head bowed down, so he tried to stop the world from spinning. The cell's iron bars were the only place that Dragh could rest to keep from puking. He kept his eyes closed to keep the world straight, from painting the floors with his guts. The rest of the cell was the hard granite stone of the mountains around them, cold, unforgiving. Dragh grunted. His mouth dried of saliva. His stomach turned over as he grunted. The jailer was whistling. Excuse me. The tune not quite carrying down the stone hallway. Its sound mixed with the sputtering of torches in the early dawn light. Sunlight hit his back, warming him from one window high in his cell. The heat made his nausea all the worse. Footsteps echoed down the hall, and their cadence told Dragh he'd screwed up royally. He could hear the cane tapping along with each footfall. Click, click, click. Every step conveyed annoyance. He'd hear about this. No hiding his long night out. Dragh shook his head as if he would banish the hangover he felt. Dragh, the voice dripped with frustration, contempt. Ellis, I should have known they'd send you. Dragh almost barked the words, his mouth dry. Ellis scoffed. They? No. He sent me. He sent his errand boy, did he? Dragh's knuckle turned white as he gripped the bars of his cell. I'm your father's advisor, not an errand boy, your highness, Ellis said loudly. Dragh grunted, his head already splitting from his headache. Shut up. Leave me be. Ellis paced back and forth in front of Dragh's cell. You shouldn't be here. All you have to do is tell them who you are. I am Dragh, a man of the 2nd Legion. Ellis walked the length of his cell, his cane tapping on each bar, the noise reverberating in Dragh's skull. He's not going to be happy. First, you spur his request, then you go and join the Legion. Dragh considered him, rubbing on his dimples. I know what I am, and so does he. I joined the 2nd. They're my family now. Boy, you are royal by blood. A fight outside of a pub is no reason for you to be in here. Ellis looked around the prison cells as if they might absorb him. Dragh laughed. I'm in the 2nd because they only take criminals. I am what I am. Ellis sighed, shaking his head. You've been summoned to the palace. Dragh peered at Ellis, shaking his head. Well, he can go to the pit. I won't be there. The last time I went to the palace, I almost killed him. The corner of Ellis's mouth raised in what Dragh thought was a smile. I told him as much. But nonetheless, you owe him your fealty. Ellis's eyes narrowed, praising Dragh. It's about your little bastard, the one you seem to have forgotten to mention. Ellis wagged his cane back and forth. Tisk, tisk. What the pit are you talking about? Ellis laughed. Oh, this is perfect. You didn't know? Dragh sighed. His head was a mess. The anger rose in him like bile. His meaty fists gripped the bars as a lifeline. He could feel blood rising in his face. He wanted to strike out at Ellis, to rip out his throat. He settled for less. Go away, Ellis. He watched with some satisfaction as Ellis took a sharp breath at the anger radiating off of Dragh. Ellis said nothing as he walked away, his mouth a tight line. Dragh knew what he'd have to do now. He'd made it worse for himself. He knew that as the words left his mouth, Ellis didn't speak for himself. He spoke for others, and he'd be relaying that message. He knew he'd have to go see her if what Ellis said was true. He hoped to Zufir that it wasn't. And that's chapter break.
Wow. So he's a prisoner, but we have to wait till the novella to find out why. What'd he do?
So actually, at the start of the book, he was just in a bar fight. So
okay. So
really why he was only in prison this time for a night.
okay, but there was a longer stay. His criminal career began with something else.
Many years before that.
So this was just the latest in a long line of prison stays.
Yes. Yeah, and the inspiration for it, oddly enough, was at the time I was writing. I'd been reading and watching a fair amount about the French Foreign Legion. So this is kind of French Foreign Legion meets Braveheart. There's the tribal people in the north. There's kingdoms. There's councils. There's a French Foreign Legion-esque 2nd Legion, and Dragh's part of it through and through, and he thrives in the environment. Funny enough.
That ends his criminal career. He gets a real career as something else.
Yeah.
So who's in power right now? Because if Dragh is getting in bar fights and getting thrown in prison, then he's obviously he's not ruling a country or anything.
He's a prince, and his father's still the king.
Okay, so all right, so his father's ruling things. So why is he getting in bar fights if his father's the king? Doesn't he have like court functions and princely things to do that don't involve bar brawls?
No, he's given it all up. So it's one of the main conflicts of the book is the fact that Dragh, while he's a prince, refuses the crown. He doesn't want it, and he's made it bad enough that he was accepted into the Second Legion, which is the like I said, is the inspiration for the novella. But it is one of the prime conflicts of the book is the fact that Dragh doesn't want the crown, and his father doesn't know what to do with that. The king, and
he doesn't want the crown, but the crown doesn't. But the crown, wants him because he's the son.
Exactly. And so
is there a spare? Is there a spare heir, or is only him?
There's no spare, and the general of the Second Legion is his uncle, so the king's brother.
I see.
Yeah. So a couple of layers of criminality and family dynamics and betrayal and crime and politics. It's all kind of mixed in there. I really enjoyed writing that part.
That's really interesting. And like, so if they have this legion, then there's like a war going on, or it's just they just put people in here and train them and put them out there to keep the peace.
So the first kind of let's call it nation conflict is there's some revolting tribes in the north that are under Landor's rule, which is the nation in control of, and the Second Legion is sent north to quell the tribes, to bring them back in line.
And Prince Charming here is sent with them because he's part of the Legion.
He goes because that's where the second is told to go.
Or rather, Prince Criminal. He's not really that charming.
Yeah.
Oh, that's all right. So you were talking before we went to the excerpt, you were talking about some of the interesting second characters. So I'm guessing, well, does he make friends? It's a short chapter, so we didn't get, he seems tough. He didn't quite get, he doesn't seem like he's a jerk, but was a very short chapter, so we don't know.
He's nice to his friends, let's put it that way.
Okay, so we've got a bit of an attitude.
Yeah, he's got a motley crew of friends, and so Hamel is one of his best friends. He has a huge war axe. Relish is another one of his friends who's kind of a bit of a drunkard, but he's got a heart of gold. There's twin brothers, Pello and Cello, who love their mother, but one of them is a really terrible person, unfortunately, and he generally has to be kept in line by his own friends. And then the last friend is a man named Gerald, who is very quiet, and when he speaks, he commands attention. He only says things that are important, and we come to find out that Hamel, his closest friend, is the only person in the Second Legion besides his uncle who know that he's a prince, that he's royal. So no one else in the Second Legion knows. And Hamel's crime was trying to defend a young boy who was stealing food because his family was starving. And so there's some sympathetic characters there. There's some unsympathetic characters, and then there's some mysteries, which are always fun to write about.
Do they find out that he's a royal Dragh?
Well, yes.
Does that be an interesting plot point?
They do. They do.
How do they react to that?
Unexpected way, and it becomes a real problem later on. Yeah.
You might not want the crown, but you can't always escape it.
I like the way you put it. The crown wants you.
That's right. It, so that puts a whole problem of succession in there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You better hope his father lives forever.
Well, and here's the, this is what I kind of was excited for in writing this series and starting this series is it's generational. So the next time you see these characters, if you see them, excuse me, it'll be the next generation. It'll be Dragh's son. So
Dragh's obviously gonna not be too much of a jerk if he finds a lady love.
Yes. Yep. Everyone deserves love. That's so
he must have some redeemable qualities.
Yeah. He's a reluctant hero.
Or she creates some redeemable qualities in him.
Exactly. And I think that one of the most relatable parts about the character, and you kind of wonder, am I writing this, or are they already out there and I'm just kind of penning the outline?
Oh, they're already out there and they're plotting our demise if we don't give them what they want.
That's how I feel as well. Family is found family and family and the creation of your own family are kind of real themes throughout the book. I think that I was never in the military, but I think that that's probably a big theme within any kind of group of people that come together to do something hard.
And it's a huge thing in military fantasy. It's so much bigger because it's not just like they're your chosen family, but sometimes they're the family that's chosen for you because you join the unit. And if you get lucky, you like the people because it's drilled into you to protect the person next to you. And I was never in the military either, but I read so much military books. I wonder sometimes if in a past life maybe I was.
Exactly.
So I can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that I love most about it is that unit becomes kind of like a family with the authoritarian parents who is giving you orders.
Oh, exactly. And so two of my close friends were Doug and Ian. They were in the Navy and the Army, and I learned a lot from them about those kind of social dynamics, the found family kind of part of the military, and they always took care of each other. They always took care of all of their brothers and sisters in the services, and that was a really amazing thing to see. And I think it taught me a lot and helped kind of inform some of my writing as well.
And you learn to put your differences aside and as if they were your actual sibling and somehow I muted myself. I didn't touch. Oh, it might have this at my work when my headset at work that there's a button on the actual thing and I always forget and
that happens.
Yeah. So I was saying, you have to put your differences aside and take care of each other because you're often in situations in the military where there is no outside help. You're cut off, you're stuck. So you might hate this other person's guts, but you need to pull together and put all that behind each other because you ain't going to survive if you don't. And that can build like bonds.
Absolutely. You end up needing the other people, right? It's none of this, no matter what part of your life you're in, is very often a solo venture.
No. And I find that military fiction in particular tends to deeply explore not just the human condition, but relationships that are not romance. And there's so many wonderful relationships that are totally platonic that get explored in all different shapes and depth. And I find that so fascinating about it, that I wish more people would read this because there's not just relationship, love relationships are not all that are out there. There's so many other relationships that you can have that are fulfilling and wonderful and help you have a full life out, because you can have a romantic relationship and be totally miserable. Yeah, absolutely. But if you have, go on.
No, there's when we write about people, and we imagine ourselves in their situations, we empathize, we think, what would I do? What would they do here? and then
I wouldn't do anything. I would not do most of the things my characters do. They make some interesting. They have some very interesting decisions that they make. I would not sneak into a library of forbidden knowledge and steal something from a fallen angel. Like,
fair point.
I don't care what you are offering. That would be an instant no for me, and I'd walk away. But
yeah, that's.
I have a character who's like, I'm bored. Why not?
Yeah, this is a fair point. But the relationships, those are the things that like they become something very interesting as you write characters and you tie them together, and it is not just about this person's wife or this person's husband or these person's children. It becomes about the people that they're with all the time, and something else happens there. The strength of friendship or the bonds of friendship or duty are just fascinating things to explore through characters, and why they do things they do.
Yep. And what are the logical consequences of doing the things that you do?
All the consequences.
You poke the bear. The
bill comes due.
What's the bear going to do to you? Or the dragon. Like I said, my characters make some really bad decisions. Have some faulty decision-making skills.
Yeah, it's a fun experience. I will say that, telling stories.
Oh, it definitely is. It definitely is. And okay, so before we got into the interview, so you were saying that like you're gonna have different books, different generations. So we started with book 1, which was Dragh.
Mm-hmm.
So is book 2 also Dragh, or is that the next generation?
It's the next generation. So I made the decision early on that I wanted the generational series. I spent a lot of time reading David Gemmell, or Gemmell, however you want to say it. A very famous British author of fantasy, and I loved the way that he spread his stories out. And so, excuse me, I wanted to emulate that. I thought that was a really awesome way to tell a story. And so it's not Dragh's lifetime.
Okay.
It's a snapshot of his life, and then it's a snapshot of his son's life, and then it will be generations after that. We tell each story through the lens of. So you'll have to figure out in between how myths are made of people's actions and how they're misconstrued or changed, or let's say padded over time to be some things that they're not occasionally. I thought that would be a really fun experience to write.
No, that is interesting. So this is just a snapshot in time in his life, and then it's okay. That's interesting. Yeah. And you said before we started talking that you had like 5 books already in it.
So I started this kind of self-publishing venture, and I thought I would write a trilogy.
Yeah.
And, write something else. But
then the characters get a hold of you, and they never let go, and you find you're written 20-something books about them.
Exactly, and that kind of
and they still have more things they want you to write.
Yeah, that bug bit me, and so I'm going to write about 5 generations of the Sunborns. I've already written another novella, like I said. I'm sure I'll write a couple more because I can't help myself. These ideas take hold, and you just can't shake them out, so you have to write them out.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the way it goes. That's the unwritten rule. Although not all authors have that. Some authors have like very well-behaved characters who just do the trilogy or the duology or whenever they planned and then leave them alone and they go write something wildly different. I'm not that lucky.
I don't know. I think I'm on your side. I don't think my characters are going to let me sleep until I tell their stories. And then they're at making stuff up as they go too.
Oh, so. Of course. Oh, of course. Yeah. Definitely. And all you can do is like, okay, you sure this is what you did? Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds highly implausible, but if you are claiming that this is it and you're insisting, then I'll put that down.
Yeah.
We'll see if readers believe it.
Yeah. And then I'll also have to figure out how you got there. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah. The worst is when you have the end and you're like, well, how did you start this? And they're like, I don't know. You're the author. You figure it out. And you're like, oh, great. Oh, and then everything you come up with is like, no, it wasn't that. Well, then what was it? You know?
It's hard. Yeah.
It's like you're trying to find out what caused the Big Bang sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. It's the strangest experience to know something of your story and then have to figure out the backside and go, wait a minute, like trying to figure out why Dragh went to prison. It took forever. And then all of a sudden it was there and I thought, oh, oof.
Yeah.
That stinks.
Characters.
Everyone is innocent until they're not in the Second Legion. Let's put it that way.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's ominous.
Yeah.
All right. So the first book is out. Which is the second book out?
No,
it's not. Okay. So
on the second book.
Gotcha. So the first book is out. The novella is coming out for why he's in the Legion. So, okay. So and that's coming out in a couple months. And then what's following on after that novella?
It'd be book 2. So I'm working on book 2 now and probably have the novella out by September. And you can get it for free if you sign up for my newsletter by September and then thereafter. And then book 2, I'm hoping to have out before next May.
Oh, so the novella is not going to be on retailers. It's only going to be from your newsletter.
It will probably be available to purchase a printed copy, but the ebook will be available for free through my newsletter.
Okay.
Yep.
That's interesting. That's cool. No, it's interesting because usually KU folks, well, yeah, because then you can't give it away, but you could still put it on Amazon and just not make it in KU if you had wanted to, because you can do whatever you want if you're not in KU. But that, it's all your decision. That's awesome. So, all right, so you're writing book 2, and is Junior being cooperative, or is he giving you a run for your money? Making you work hard for every page.
Oh, he's making me work hard, and he's not Dragh. He's a politician. He's not the same as his father, and he doesn't get along with his father. And I will say that Dragh, as the general, becomes a very difficult man to deal with. And he has
difficult for you or difficult for the other characters?
Both. He's so hard to deal with because he's just a difficult person. And
difficult, like he's contrary, or?
Oh yeah. Yeah. He's a difficult, contrary old general. And, while he refused the crown of his kingdom, he's still a Sunborn, and he still has he's still respected by a lot of people, so he causes a lot of trouble.
But he lives for that. Like, you had to know in book 1 he was not going to make your life easy in the sequels.
It's shocking.
Maybe he's jealous that you're not writing any. Well, you did the novella, but
he's lived that part of his life, and nothing stops me from coming back and writing some more about him. But for now, it's about his son and what happens to the kingdom after a prince refuses the crown, after a council continues to meddle and has a general distaste for this Sunborn family.
Interesting. So I guess his father had passed away by the second book. And does Junior want the crown?
Junior has the crown.
Junior has the crown.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like he's having a good time of it, though, if the council is not happy with him. And
no, it's going to be difficult for both of them.
And then you'll have to write the next generation and you said there's another novella you were thinking of writing.
Yeah, and so there's events in between that are really interesting. So I've kind of got a history mapped out for what's occurred over the last let's say the last large events in the last 1,000 years, and then large events over the more than 100 years that passes through the series. And there's some of those events that I want to explore, that I want to write, whether they become novellas that I release to the world is another question. But
Or if they're going to stay in your trunk.
I've found it important as I write this series to
Yeah.
have those histories to draw on, to speak about, to inform character decisions and motivations and the politics of the place. Right? It's become very important and helpful. Yeah. So I became a bit of more of a planner after my pantsing and not outlining didn't work out for me. So I always have an outline. I've got a large outline for book 2. But then sometimes the characters start writing themselves. They tell me the story.
All the time. All the time.
I think that's the magic, right?
I just come up with 10 things I'd like them to do in the book, and I'm lucky if they do 5 of them. Yeah. But I have to keep adjusting the 10 things, because as the story changes, eventually they will do something dumb and just be have wandered off a cliff in the story and don't know how to get back. And I have to figure out how to get them out of their problem. So we make a do list. Okay, this is what you need to do. And sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
I just keep making lists every time we come to it. And then at some point, there's the list of things you must do before we can end the book and have a satisfying conclusion. These are all the things you left hanging. Let's start picking some and closing them out.
Oh, I know. Just, they're not cooperative characters.
No.
It's one of the things you learn as an author.
No, they're not at all. Not at all. I keep trying to write shorter books, and they get longer instead. And I'm like, guys,
yeah,
we're trying to get books done faster so people can read your shenanigans.
I understand. They take what they take, right? The story.
Yeah.
Everything is in service to the story, and sometimes the story is alive, and that's the beauty of writing. It's from the muse. It goes through you.
And then sometimes you write something and you're like, I'm going to have to write a bunch of offshoots of this, because there's just too much stuff there's too much story we're leaving on the table that we can't fit in this.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Because, there's the main thing we're trying to do, the 500 other things that they do well. You're trying to get them to do the one thing, the point of the entire story.
Yep. Yep. And you're partway through Act 1 and you go, wait a minute. I need them to do this.
Yeah, and then they're running by all this cool stuff, and you're like, wait, that's neat. That's neat. We need to come back to that. Why is this there? It's so cool, but why is it there?
I've got 6 chapters on this now. Why? When did that happen?
Oh, don't worry. We'll make it make sense later. You better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I feel that. That's the fun.
Yeah. And then when it all works and it all pulls together and you end up with a satisfying conclusion, and all these things that felt like extra that they were doing all tie in, or you need that extra thing that they did that you were pissed off at them for 2 weeks for doing, because you're like, this is not getting us closer to the main problem you're trying to solve. And then in order to solve that main problem, you need like something they did over there, found over there. And you're like, okay, all right, you were right. You knew better than I did. I admit.
Yeah. It's so cool to create and to see what creation becomes, right? It's the joy I find in writing. Definitely.
Yeah. It's often a co-creation, because you don't control a lot of what the characters do. So if you don't like something that goes on in a book, just don't blame the author. Sometimes it's the characters. We did the best that we could. Our job is to get them to the end of the book.
Yep.
So,
in whatever state they end up in. Yes.
They make some decisions that even we can't stop.
Very true.
I'm not the god of that world. I'm often just the scribe.
Yeah.
which is pretty wild. So is this, so you said it was epic fantasy. Is there a lot of magic? Why are they called the Dragon Legion? Are there dragons?
Funny enough, there are no dragons. So
that's fine.
It's military, historical, epic fantasy.
Yeah.
The three genres I touch, and it's a legion of men, and they are in kind of a medieval Roman period of time, and the inspiration for all of it is, you know, kind of a Jamel-esque type universe where there are all kinds of nations that will have all kinds of parts to play in the story of this empire. And I wanted to create some depth and some world building elements that would show us growth and change over time, and how nations change into empires, and how empires are shaped by the nations within them and the people within them. And so that kind of cohesion or lack of cohesion are some of the main conflicts in the series. You know, how does a tribal people get along with a city dwelling people? How does a city dwelling people get along with a group of plains people, of horse people, of sailors, the Relarians on the oceans, or people from the deserts in the south? It's a mix of different and interesting groups of people that just begged for their story to be told. And so I put them all in there, and I'm mixing them up, and I'm looking at it through the lens of empire, really.
That's cool.
And empires.
So the kingdom / the empire is like, it's also a character. It's the main character of the series.
Yeah. Yeah. And we know from history that empires become and then are undone in interesting and different ways. And I wanted to write about that kind of power struggle, that will to survive that this thing has, that we don't often see as we look at it through the lens of people.
And you can't always see that you're in the end stages of what you're in.
Yeah. And this family has already lost it all. So it's not that they have nothing to lose, but their struggle to regain power is different than somebody who is getting it for the first time.
Yeah. They have more to gain than to lose, is probably the better way of saying it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You're exactly right.
That's cool. All right. So it's like low magic.
Very low magic. There's magic.
No, is it like a hard magic system or a soft magic system? Like, are there hard and fast rules or
soft magic? There's magic is not going to be a way in which problems are solved in this series. Magic is something that does exist, and it exists for some characters in real ways, but for our Sunborn family, it's not going to be a way. It's not going to be a weapon that they use. Let's say it's going to be something that they have to contend with prophecy, with gods, but it's not going to be. It's not going to be a main point of the series, I guess.
No, and that's we need all kinds of fantasy stories, ones with tons of high magic, ones with lower magic, because there's different roles that magic can play. It could be the problem. Those are my favorite. I like writing that when the magic is the problem. It's you, magic. You are the problem.
That's fun because people don't expect that, right?
Well, because I keep doing it. I think I'm not sure that anybody. I'm not sure that anybody goes into any one of my books and doesn't expect magic to be the problem. I often write about people who have lots of magic, but their magic is usually not. Whatever magic you need to fix the problem is not the one that they have.
Yeah.
So they're trying to MacGyver a solution with the magic that they have. It's not exactly the one you would want in this situation.
That sounds very fun. I'm gonna have to pick up some of your starter packs. That's really awesome. What one would you recommend starting with? The first, or would you start in the middle? What's your thoughts?
My favorite is Cursebreaker Enchanted. It was the first book that I published in 2016. I've read it like 3 times already. It's the book that it's the book that I sit down and like re-edit every few years.
Okay.
I hope I'm making it better and not worse at this point. Because I've gone through it 3 times now and changed. I don't change like the plot, but refine things. Decide I hate some of the descriptions. It's very Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings has a very heavy influence on it. It is very much about magic.
Awesome. Well,
there's a mystery. I should put together a starter pack because I have like multiple series. They're all related, connected. Yes. They'll take place in the same world, but roughly at the same time. And the characters wander back and forth between them, creating all sorts of havoc with me trying to like plot a book out.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I'm looking forward to digging in.
And I like some of the secondary characters who wander in and out. And so they inadvertently end up taking over books, getting way too much page time because I like them. Foobarring my plans.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I can see that. I've had that experience too. Like, where did you come from?
Especially like if like, you know, some character that I'm writing in there that's supposed to be there, that's supposed to be getting all the page time, like does something and I just stop liking that.
Yeah.
I try not to play favorites, but it's hard.
Oh, I know. I had another book that I wrote called The Covent Garden Affair. I was telling you about the one set in the 50s London, and one of my secondary characters was my favorite character. I liked him more than their protagonist. And I just thought, where did you come from? Like, what happened here?
I've rewritten books because I fell in love with like a secondary character and just was like, you know, why are we? And it became a struggle to write about the main character because I just didn't like them anymore. And I'm like, why are we doing this? Let's just redo the story so that other character is either not here or is minor, and make my life easier. It's hard when like a character does something to a character you really like, especially if that character you really like is the main character in another series and you're like, I'm totally getting revenge on you in their next book. You're going down, buddy.
Yeah, you're like, this isn't going well for you.
Yeah, you're going to regret all your life decisions. And I'm going to enjoy that.
Sometimes we take comfort in the misery of certain characters that might deserve it.
Yeah, I will definitely be enjoying them getting their comeuppance in the next book in another series that I'm writing.
That's awesome.
But, well, they didn't have to call down the goddess of vengeance on my favorite character. Like, that was a choice they did not have to make.
Absolutely. And then, you know.
But I needed that goddess anyways for something else. So I was like, damn, now I can't cut this part out that I don't like because I need her. There needs to be some reason for why she's involved.
I like that. That's interesting.
These are the things that the characters do that you're like, why are you doing this?
You think, well, may as well take advantage.
Yeah, I needed it because the plot got way out of control. Just, when the Rogue God trilogy comes out and people read it, they will understand what I'm saying. The third book went way off the rails.
But it sounds fun, so that's the name of the game.
Yeah, it's 9 months of my life, but yeah, it's a lot of it was fun to write. Some of it was a bit tedious but reading it after was enjoyable. But trying to because it was 4 main characters and they needed to team up at some point and they didn't want to. And they were all 4 on their own separate missions, and trying to get them all together was just because I'm like, okay, readers are really going to want them to at some point team up. They need to team up. Some of the characters don't team up till like halfway through book 3 because they just really didn't want to team up. That was
lone wolves.
Nah, they were off doing things and having a good time, and there's rules. System is somewhat hard magic. There's certain realms and things that you can't go to if you're like, you have to meet certain requirements, and you can't go there, and they didn't, and I didn't have a way of fixing that without breaking all the world building, and I was not going to do that just for the sake of teaming up, because that would be cool. So we had to find other ways of doing it. It's a bit more complicated.
That's understandable.
You feel the expectation of readers who have not read the book yet, because it's not published, weighing upon you. You're like, okay, they're going to want to see this. I've got to find some way to make this happen.
Okay. That's really cool. I'm really looking forward to trying this out, taking a look. And when that series comes out, especially, that sounds really fun.
It's launching on Kickstarter, and hopefully in a few weeks, as I'm writing the epilogue this weekend, I hope. They don't like take another twist on this already massive trilogy.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Anyways, back to the Dragon Legion. I'm sorry. It's just very much on my mind because I've been trying to end this book for like a month now, and they're just like, no, we have to tie up this loose end and this loose end. I'm like, no, really, I could write another book. We could do this in a short story or something.
Yeah.
It's not necessary to be this. To tie up I don't know. It's
okay. That's what we do, isn't it?
Yeah, with you jump. My characters would murder me in my sleep if I decided to jump generations.
I feel the pull. I do. I feel the pull, but we'll start here and see where I end up. I might end up with, 30 books.
You might end up writing 5 series, one for Dragh, one for his son, one for filling in all the things in between.
Well, that's how I ended. I went from trilogy to 5 was, the characters, the readers seemed to really enjoy it. And then the characters seemed to kind of demand it. They all had their own story to tell and their own interesting time in their lives. So
it would be interesting to see how readers handle going from book 1, which is about Dragh, to book 2, which is about his son. Are they going to demand more books about Dragh? Is Dragh going to demand more books about Dragh?
Exactly. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the feedback and to see where it ends up.
Yeah, you might come back on here and be like, well, now I have 5 series.
Yeah. Riddle me this. How did that happen?
An Empire in 15 books instead of 5.
Exactly. Yeah. Wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want? Oh, is there anything else you want to say about the Dragon Legion or anything else that we've been talking? Because we've been talking about almost 90 minutes. I want to be sensitive to your time.
I would say, thank you to the readers so far. It has been a real seminal moment in my life to publish this book, and it's been really amazing hearing from readers, and thank you to you and all the other hosts that have had me on. It has been very, very enjoyable to go through this experience and become a published author, a real dream of mine my whole life. And so just very appreciative of the opportunity and having a lot of fun along the way, which is really cool. So thank you to everybody.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
And you're welcome to come back with another book.
Appreciate that. I'll
pull more spoilers out of you.
You're good. I will say you asked really good questions. I thought, ooh, that's a good one. Yeah. So it's it's been a hoot, and I'll definitely let you know when I have more coming out.
Oh yeah, definitely come back. We want to hear in the Battle of Wills how it went with Dragh. Did Dragh win? Did the second book end up not about the son as much as about Dragh like you thought?
I'll let you know in like 6 months. That's what that's how long it'll take me to figure that one out.
Because if you're dealing with a character that's that strong-willed, like that's definitely a possibility.
I agree. Unfortunately, true.
That would be fun if like you come back on and you're like, well, each book is now that I was going to do was is now going to be its own series. I'm just going to write this for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's a real concern.
That's where I'm at this point. I'm like, okay, I have other ideas, but we're probably not going to get to them for about who knows if we'll ever get to them. There's just too many things to write about in the world that I'm currently writing in. So
it's a worthy journey.
Yeah, and the characters know where I live, so I'm a little bit afraid of not writing what they want. It's like, what if they are real out there? What if there is some alternate universe where they actually exist?
Exactly. You can't take that risk. That's not worth it.
No, and they're fun to write about. So yeah. But thank you so much for coming. Today we've been talking about The Dragon Legion by Isaac Hill, and also the novella. What was the novella called?
Dragh's Demise.
Oh, okay. That's a title. Wow.
Yeah. I haven't told anybody that yet, but it's called
Not pulling any punches.
Nope.
Wow. What's the second book going to be called?
It has a working title.
Okay.
I don't know if it's right.
Okay, then we'll leave that for when you come back.
Yes.
You can tell us about that because you'll be further along, and
I'll have a feel for it then, right? It'll be the cover's built, and so here's the title.
Although I've written some books and I've gotten like the last page, and I'm like, the working title still doesn't feel right, but I still don't have something else.
That may happen.
You just wrestle with it until you come up with something, and you're never been. Yeah, titles are hard.
Titles are hard. Excuse me. Sorry. Titles are harder than I thought they would be. They don't just come to you.
No, I mean, some stories they do. The story is there, and it's obvious what the title should be. I have a book that I'm writing where most of the story is they're chasing dragons. So the obvious title for the book should be Chasing Dragons. You know, like, this is what we are. I have another book where I decided to name it to be really literal, and they storm the gates. So I was like, we'll just call it Storm the Gates. They actually do that in the first act. So it'll be nice and literal.
I like that. That makes sense.
And that was book 3. Book 2 was Summon the Gods, because they do actually summon the gods.
Yeah.
And the first book, Gateway to Hell, because they do actually open a gateway to hell. I was like, let's be ultra literal. And so we can tell people we actually do what the title says. Isn't that amazing?
That's fantastic, because there are no dragons in the Dragon Legion, and I get a lot of guff for that.
Oh yeah, I don't put dragon in the title unless there actually are dragons.
Lesson learned.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I think Game of Thrones. Yeah, because there was something with dragons in that. I didn't. He's a very good writer. George R. R. Martin, but not my cup of tea, story-wise, character-wise. So I DNF'd this song of the Game of Thrones, the first book, like 50 pages in, like 20 years ago. But yeah, there was something about that and dragons, and people like, are there going to be dragons? And eventually there actually were, but for a long time there weren't any. And I remember people being upset about that.
In mine ever. So here we are.
But there could be legends that there were dragons 1,000 years ago or something.
I could do that. That's a thing.
Or Spirit of the Dragon is what, appeared to somebody, and that's why they named it the Dragon Legion.
Book 2, The Spirit of the Dragon. It's done.
There you go. You can explain the whole thing. You're like, what's cooler than a ghost dragon?
Who does like the spirit of the dragon?
Right? They could invoke the spirit of the dragon when they're, I don't know, in battle to protect them.
Absolutely.
Or something. It doesn't have to actually happen. Like a good luck charm.
Yeah, exactly.
Some people have rabid feet, some people have the spirit of a dragon.
So just a cozy good luck charm.
Yeah, I know which one I'd rather have. I'll take the dragon.
Yeah, it's fair.
Then they could get the mark of the dragon, some kind of tattoo or something. Like, that could be a whole belief thing around it.
Yes.
And you could eventually write the beginning story and find out that this is a total crock of, that somebody made this up to give, that there never was or something. Like you could do all kinds of fun things, or there really could have been. And maybe the spirit of the dragon gave them bad advice or something.
Skeletons, bones,
yeah,
fossils.
That's true. They could have a dragon bone that they carry around with them, or a so-called dragon bone. We don't know if it's actual. But you can have so much fun with that.
Yes.
There's so much. Yeah, you should have fun with that, especially since you get guff for it. You should have a lot of. You should poke fun at it. Have fun at its expense.
All in. Yeah, I was making fun of Sam Paisley today. I posted her yesterday. I posted a picture of a turtle. I said, "Still no dragons."
Didn't like somebody else in the break-ins have a book where the title it was something, but there was none of that actual creature in the book? I feel like there was.
Possibly.
I feel like it wasn't just the Dragon Legion has no dragons. I feel like somebody else in the break-ins had something, but they don't act. But whatever the thing, like a situation like that. So I remember the group making fun of them. I think
it was me, but I have to think about that one. I'm not really sure. Brian, no. Josh, no. Just the gods. Not sure. They might even make fun of Rob for Pathlighter. That happens occasionally. Yeah, they're all well humored, which is the fun part.
Yeah, because I feel like somebody else had a similar situation to the No Dragons and Dragon Legion. They're not allowed in the Legion. That could be their slogan.
Yeah, it's not good. We're
the Dragon Legion. We have no dragons. We don't need no dragons.
We have all these harnesses. What are we going to do with them? Yeah, that's
why they have criminals. We just put them in the harnesses.
Exactly. The depth of the story is incredible.
Yeah, you should in book 2 like have a lot of fun at its expense, especially since the son is a political character. It doesn't sound like he's in the Dragon Legion.
No.
And he doesn't get along with Dragh, who is in the Dragon Legion. I feel like the son could make some comments about the name, the fact that there aren't any dragons, that this could be a joke.
I like that.
In a sore spot.
Yeah.
That could I wish you much fun with that, because I would have a lot of fun with it.
I appreciate the ideas.
You're welcome. I am very good at ideas. I have way more ideas than I will ever be able to write. So you're welcome to any and all ideas that I have given you in this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. So thank you so much for joining me. I've been your indie fantasy author, Melinda Kucsera, and in this episode we had Isaac Hill, who joined me to talk about the Dragon Legion and Dragh's demise. I got that right. Was it the demise of Dragh? It was Dragh's demise. I was close. Remember to like, subscribe, and all the things so you get notified the next time Isaac comes back, so we can find out if the Dragon Legion ever gets a dragon. And if Dragh remains the secondary character in book 2, or if he stages a coup and takes over for his son.
Tune back in to find out more.
That's right. That's right. If you're not ringing the bell on YouTube and hitting the, I forgot what it is on your podcast thing, so that you are notified about the next episodes, you won't find out the answers to these questions and more.
I like it.
And that'll do it for this episode. Have a great day or a great night wherever you are. Thank you.